I'm speaking with Saskatchewan publisher, editor, and author Edward Willett today about Shapers of Worlds, a collection of short stories in the science fiction and fantasy genres. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. I understand that many of these authors come from an appearance on your podcast, and this is an anthology. So, can you tell me about it and some of the authors and their stories?
Well, actually, they all come from my podcast. This is volume 4 in this series, and all of them, a lot of anthologies have a theme. These anthologies have only one theme, which is that I interviewed all these people on my podcast about the creative process. So all of them were guests on my podcast, and the stories therefore run the gamut. There's science fiction, there's fantasy, there's a touch of horror. Some of them are modern day, some of them are far future, some of them are in fantastical worlds. So it's kind of each anthology I try to come up with a different metaphor for it. And for this one, I settled on a church buffet supper. So everybody brought some different dish, but it all adds up to a satisfying whole.
Excellent. Well, I am a fan of the genre, and I guess, the satisfaction is a little bit of escapism. What do you think makes these books so popular?
I think science fiction and fantasy is the one, well, there are two genres technically, but if you call them the fantastical fiction genre overall, it's the fact that you aren't limited by anything except your imagination. Within science fiction, you're limited sort of by what we understand to be the way that physical laws work, although, as Arthur C. Clarke famously said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And in fantasy, of course, you can have magic and anything can go, although you have to be internally consistent and set some rules for how you use it. But it's you're just not limited. So anything you can imagine, any situation you can imagine, you can turn into a story in science fiction and fantasy, and that's liberating both as an author and as a reader.
One of the unique features of this anthology is the artwork by Wendy Nordell. Can you tell me a little bit about it? I understand there's a piece for each of the works in the book.
Yes, Wendy is a Calgary artist who happens to be my niece. And back in 2018, I had a collection of poetry, science fiction and fantasy poetry, which grew out of something that kind of a challenge that was issued by the Poet Laureate of Saskatchewan at the time, Gerald Hill, for everybody to, within the Saskatchewan Writers Guild over Poetry Month, to write new poetry, incorporating a couple of lines of published poetry. And me being me, I wrote science fiction and fantasy poetry. And I knew I wanted to have it illustrated when I decided to publish it. And it was actually my wife that kind of hit me over the head and said, "Your niece is an illustrator." So I brought her on board, and she did such a wonderful job with the illustrations for that. I thought she'd be perfect for this. And so the whole thing was kickstarted, and my stretch goal was to have it illustrated, and I was able to get enough funds to make that happen. And so yes, she did. She did a unique black and white illustration illustrating each of the 19 stories. The authors love them, and I think they really add something special to the book overall.
Edward, this book was released at the end of January. What's the reception been so far?
Well, it's barely had time to have a reception, but the reviews I've read have been good. There's an online short fiction review site called Tangent Online, who reviews most of the science fiction in the field. And they gave it 10 of the 19 stories made their recommended reading list for the year. And a couple of them, mine included, had their highest rating of 3 stars. So it was very gratifying to get that response. And the reviews that have started to pop up here and there have been positive, and the authors as well really seem to be happy with the result.
I assume as well that the book is available at all good booksellers around the province.
Yes, and I should actually hold it up since I have it here. That's what it looks like, and you can get it at well, I can't guarantee that any specific bookstore will have it, but any bookstore can certainly order it in. And it's widely available online. Anywhere that you buy books, you'll find it online in both print and ebook formats.
All right. Well, Edward, thank you so much. I look forward to reading it and getting my hands on it. So thanks for your time today and look forward to seeing it.
Thank you so much.